day I started and working on White Columns as assistant director was the opening day of Colin Tomalazzo's new Capitol show. So I had come from working in a pretty conservative 57th Street gallery with like lots of watercolor kind of stuff. And I went downtown. Actually went for a job interview at Holly Solomon, and Holly sent me down to work for Tom to Tom Solomon, who was her son, who was the director then, and it was the. And so I walked in and there's like two vacuum cleaners in a plexi box, and with like tubes underneath, and like I think it was Peter Nagy and Alan Belcher and Peter Halley and the whole group that was like the Smart Art Neo Geo crowd was in that show, with the exception of Haim wasn't in it, Ashley wasn't in it, but Ashley had just had a show at White Columns. Ashley Baker was a few months before, so I was learning about all this stuff, and so when I think about when my period that began, it was really the Colin Malazzo Smart Art period, which was a fascinating time, and a lot of things happened that were kind of interesting. And we talked a little bit before about theory heads and like the proponents of theory, and I'm like, that was a pretty heady time for that, and that I had to do a lot of reading real quick to catch up, but actually and to figure out what language to use. It always seemed to be sort of strange that anyone would want to pick one type of work and keep showing it over and over again. In that, just in terms of entertaining yourself, it's like, there's this Carrie Leibowitz painting that has the phrase, "I like spaghetti but not every night." That's all I could think is, it's like, no, do I really want to show only politically based work? Do I really want to show only queer work? Do I really want to show only one type of work? And I was just like, I would go out to studios, again, the idea of being the meta viewer, and I would see what turned me on, and whatever turned me on is what I'd show. And because I'm a human being with an attention span, and I don't find it pleasant to be bored, I would always be trying to find new types of work to show, new things that I hadn't seen before. And this is the simplest type of thing people would do is spaces would say, oh, we're not interested in painting, because painting is bourgeois decoration. And I'm like, well, why paint? If I dig it, if I'm like, getting something from it, I'm like, I would never like not show painting. But one thing that was really fascinating was, as soon as you do one show, you would create mythologies that people needed in order to try to figure out who you were as a curator. I remember, I opened up a show that was all painting, and someone said, "Oh, well, this means this means you don't hate painting anymore." And I'm like, when did I ever say I hated painting? But I realized that they looked at an earlier show that had no painting in it and thought that's what I was, And like when the show that Paul Hawk curated at White Columns about what's skateboard culture and fantasy teenagehood, I said, Paul, be aware now that you've had your name on the card as the curator of the show, everyone who's done anything with a skateboard is going to come to you in the next few. It's just, you're going to get like a tidal wave of skateboard art because of having done this one show, and when anyone would say that they had surmised something about me from looking at the shows I had done, I was always amazed that anyone could possibly think that they had gotten something specific out of an exhibition. It's just like something specific about meaning what I would like. Sometimes I'd get these calls from dealers who, whatever, they owed an artist a favor or whatever, and they would call and make an introduction and say, "Oh, I know you'll like this." And I was just like always amazed, like, how do you know? It's like, I don't even know when I go to a studio. How do you know? So it's really it's really based on my human nature that I always wanted to see something different on the walls. Also, I hate it when you go into a space and you just sort of know the type of art they show. Like, you sort of like, the elevator opens and I'm like, I won't name particular gallery names, but some galleries' agendas are so narrow. I'm like, it's just like, this is the yellow polka dot gallery, and they show yellow polka dots with 5 different artist names on them, but they're all the yellow polka dots. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? I like power. Power's a good thing. I like to think of it as like the Mel Brooks "It's Good to Be King" song. It's like, yeah, it was fun. I like that. like my opinion mattered, or and so as to some people, it was one of those things that was very funny when people go like, oh yeah, you're this, you're a star maker. I was just like, I don't know if I'm a star maker or not, but it's so nice to have people think that. And the thing is, it's like, I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but it's like, it's it is good to have your opinion taken seriously, and I can't, I don't want to make it seem like, that it wasn't a good thing. I hopefully got attention for some good artists that otherwise wouldn't have gotten it, and I mean, it's like, I remember, I think it was Dan Cameron. I'm not sure if it was Dan Cameron. I think Dan said this on a panel once, where someone said, well, you have so much power, you can give someone a career. And he goes, well, no, that's not true. Nobody has that kind of power. Because the only way to actually have that kind of power was to pick some artist you thought was really bad and make them famous. And then you really had power, And although it says as long as you're actually supporting artists that are talented, you can never take credit for their success. You can, you can say, yeah, you helped, you facilitated, you maybe explained the work in such a way to someone that they got it, but otherwise wouldn't have gotten it. But, it's like, there's no absolute power in the art world. It's all by consensus. It's like, I don't people asking, oh, how did you get this position of like respect? And I'm like, do your work, and don't do shoddy things, There was that whole period in the '80s when the lines between curator and dealer got really broken down, and people were like, making money from sales. And I was lucky; I was in an institutional setting where that was strictly forbidden, and I didn't have to worry about like someone advising, saying like, oh, if I slip you, 10% of sales, will you like advise people? So I never had to be there on the market side where things got really shady. I hope to have power again one day. I've always been kind of independent, I was getting talking about being a punk rock kid, It's like I remember Nail Blake once saying that the defining moment of our generation was when Nevermind the Bollocks, when Sex Pistols came out, and I think that's definitely true, So that was part of it. I went to a really liberal school where like my 4th grade class trip was a peace march, and always tended to be like raised in a liberal household. Coming out as a gay person too was important because you have some sense of siding with the underdog and always having to like be the underdog. So I mean, those would all be factors in it. I also felt that I liked it. I liked visiting studios. I got pleasure from looking at art. I got pleasure from other small aspects of my job too. I love the fact that I was wandering around areas of Brooklyn that I would probably never otherwise seen. One of my favorite things, on my computer I had, it was called Stud Food File. It was a studio visit food file where I would clip restaurant reviews of restaurants in the outer boroughs, and if I would know I was going to go to Red Hook, I remember there's that little place on Union that has that Italian specialty that's that artichoke sandwich thing. So it's and I'd go with that. I had a band when I was in college, and I thought I didn't need to go to college because I was going to be a rock star. And we made records, and I kept busy that way. But then the band broke up, and I had to go back to school. But I thought it was only this interim situation. So I asked, and I went back to NYU, and I said, "What's your best departments?" And they said, "Journalism, film, and art history." And I'm like, "Oh, art history. That sounds like it'll keep me entertained until my rock career takes off again." And that's all she wrote. I ended up, I was really good at it. I could remember the names and the dates, and I didn't have and I could write good essays. So, and I was actually headed towards. I thought I was headed towards academia. I thought what I wanted to do was live a sedate life, writing papers on obscure aspects of Cezanne. And then suddenly I took Arts 45 with Robert Rosenblum, and it was really just, not that we had a personal relationship, but just hearing his anecdotes about the pop art era, going then I realized art history, or being an art historian, would always be trying to recreate something I had missed, trying to figure out what it was really like to have been there. And I said, no, I'd really rather work with artists of my own generation, I didn't know how to go about doing that, so I just got a gallery job, and somehow one thing led to another, and ended up being a curator. I hadn't really intended to be. Wasn't like I got out of school saying, oh, I'm going to be a curator for an alternative space. I just was like floating around until I got my next band together. And now it's been 13 years and I gave away my last amplifier. I don't know about the future right now. It's a scary time for me. It's leaving a position you've had for 11 years that you've been very comfortable and happy in. It's like breaking up a relationship. After having been out of therapy for a couple of years, I'm like pop right back into therapy for this transition period. And because I have to decide a lot of things. I'm writing for the Village Voice and for Time Out and for some of the magazines now. And that's satisfying to me in a certain way, but I have to do something else too, and I'm trying to figure out what that next thing's going to be. Right now I'm at this position where I'm having lunch a lot. Anyone who has an idea about what I should do to make a living, I'll always have lunch with them. It's like I haven't really been able to anticipate precisely what I'm going to do, because I'm looking around to see what jobs are available, what positions are coming up, and the future's really anyone's guess at this point. Maybe by the time this airs, I don't know what the lead time is, I'll actually know something, but as of right now, I don't know anything, apart from the fact that I've got a couple deadlines for writing this week. And also that's another thing about leaving is that hectic thing I talked about before, that sense of put on another show, we have to put another show on right away. I would love to do something more considered. Lay back, something where I have months to figure out what a show's going to be, rather than days, and I can actually write something longer than 5 pages on it, and that'd be part of it. But I don't know. It's all fantasy at this point, I know that when someone asks who I am, I'm like, oh, I'm a curator. But if something else comes up that wasn't, I might be open to that too. So, and it's complicated. It's a lot of self-consideration going on now, like what makes me happy, and it's probably tied to your power question too, in that it was very satisfying being in the position I was in terms of getting stroked. These museum people would stroke you for good job you're doing, you arouse people out, your board would stroke you, artists you were showing stroke you. The only people that didn't like you particularly were the people you visited 4 times and they didn't get into anything. So it's and I think that felt good, was important to my happiness, was important to my sense of self-worth. So I'm trying to separate a lot of these things out now in my mind and trying to figure out what I cared about or what I care about for the future. But I sort of like the idea that there's something around the corner that I don't know what it is. For me, there was a double coming out. First coming out as a gay person, which I did very young at 15. And then there was a sort of second coming out as a curator, in that I was showing artists like Stephen Evans and Michael Jenkins and John Lindell, but I wasn't ever saying, oh, this is about me. I'm caring about this work because it's something that affects my life. And then I finally said, wait, I'm not being honest here. I got to be more honest in doing the shows. And I started doing shows where I actually spoke about my own life as a gay man, and how issues like AIDS and discussion about constructive sexuality affected me, and how that it wasn't an academic interest. It wasn't it wasn't something that I was removed from. So that was but then there's also this fear that you're going to get typecast, in that there's all these fears that are projected onto you if you're not a curator. Like, if you look at the shows I did at White Columns over 11 years, there were a number of gay themed shows, but it was still probably 30% of the programming. And but then there's always been this sort of fear that Neil Blake did a great piece about this, which was a bag of buttons, and it said "Member of the Gay Mafia that rules the art world." There was also this fear that it was sort of this gay backroom club that we all knew each other and we all supported each other because of it. And to some degree there is. To some degree it exists, in that there are a lot of social networks that take place in the art world among gay men, and but there's also any number of other cliques in the art world that also support each other, and all the Yale artists or whatever that function as cliques. And I like the fact that I'm part of this other old boys network that's an alternative to these other old boys network. I was actually just talking to Jane Schuler the other day, who runs SO Gallery. It's a new gallery on Christie Street. And she said, Bill, the whole art world, in terms of the power people, seems to be straight women and gay men, where the lesbians. And I'm like, I could come up with like two in power positions, 2 or 3, and very few. So there's still some sort of something missing there. We need more powerful dykes out in the world, particularly in the art world. But there are. I mean, the art world is a relatively civilized place to be out in. And if you have to deal with some like weird assumptions that someone didn't get shown because they weren't part of this gay clique, I mean, again, this is all relative. If that's the worst problem I have in the world, that's not anything I would worry about.
That's okay.